About, I'm going to say it was about 15 years ago, a very good friend of mine named Dave Shelton and Dave is an animator, cartoonist, voiceover guy. We created a sitcom for me and for Gary Coleman. And the tentative title that we had, and it sounds a little perverse, but I guarantee you once I explain it, it won't be. It was called Little Dicks. Okay? And the idea of the show, the concept of the show, and this is how I pitched it to TV Land when I met with them, was Get Smart meets Moonlighting meets The Odd Couple. Okay.
Wow.
Two former child stars meet each other at an autograph convention, and somehow or another they end up foiling a crime and solving a crime together. I own a nightclub on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, and Gary doesn't really have much. He's not doing very much. He's just doing the autograph circuit, you know. And we decide that we're going to open up an elite private investigation agency on the Sunset Strip, and we're going to solve crimes. And we bumble and we stumble, and we have people who are against us, who are trying to foil us all the way, including, you know, like all these different cast of zany, wild characters, right? But somehow at the end of 30 minutes, we always solve the crime, right? And I met with the vice president of TV Land at the time, a guy named Sal Maniaci, and I literally had nothing. I didn't have a pilot. I didn't have a script. I didn't have an outline for the show. All I had was a one-page breaking down the characters, and I said to him, Moonlighting, Get Smart, Odd Couple. He fell out of his chair. Thought it was the funniest thing he'd ever heard of in his life. Unfortunately, due to some technical issues that were going on inside of TV Land at that time, we would have been the very first TV Land original program ever.
Really?
Before anybody else. At that time, they were only doing the retro.
Right.
They were not doing anything contemporary at that point.
No.
And they loved the show. They even were willing to put up $5,000 to have a spec script written, you know, by somebody in Hollywood. I had a producer, a guy named David Permut, who was a big movie producer in Hollywood who wanted to produce the show. And we met with Gary at the guy's office. And Gary and I liked each other very much. Very much.
Yeah.
And we respected each other very much.
Which is great.
We exchanged phone numbers. We talked on the phone many times. And you know what, Jim? I'm now going to add that into my very short list of regrets. I never really kept in strong touch with Gary after that meeting that we had because we never sold the show. So I don't think I'm not going to be presumptuous and say that I could have influenced him in his life, but I think I could have been a positive influence to him in his life. Am I allowed to curse, by the way?
You mean you haven't already?
Have I?
There might have been a word or two.
Oh, okay. That might have slipped out.
Do you?
Yeah. So
perfectly fine.
So Paul Peterson, to bring him up again, was going to be at a Red Cross benefit in Hollywood. And he knew that Gary was going to be there. And he said to me, would you like me to sit you at the same table as Gary? Because we never met.
Right.
Yes, I would. So Gary and I start talking. And we're hitting it off. Like, big time. Hitting it off. And he says to me, I mean, he's already said to me at one point, I have no family. I don't have a mother and father. I have nobody in my life that I trust. You know, things like that. He goes, but for some reason, I like you. And I said to him, I know why you like me. And I'll tell you why you like me. He goes, why do I like you? I said, number one, I'm a short little fuck like you. And he looked at me. He gave me that, like, what are you talking about, Willis look.
Yeah, what are you talking about, Willis?
Like, what? I said, I'm a short little fuck like you. I said, and I'm coming at you through the front door. I'm not coming at you through the back door. I'm being incredibly transparent. I'm telling you everything you need to know about me, about the television show idea that I wrote for us. And he said, he looked at me again, very not quite sure. And he goes, yeah, okay. Okay. He was very pessimistic. He said, I don't think we're ever going to sell the show. He said, but you have my promise that any meetings that we have with networks or producers, whatever, if you want me to be at the meeting, I will be at the meeting. And we did. We had one meeting at this guy, David Permut's office, probably about 2 hours. It was a really good meeting. His agent was with him. He was there. And we laughed a lot. We had a couple of situations where we might have butted heads a little on a couple of things. He said, you know I do dialysis. I said, oh, I'm very well aware of your health issues, Gary. And I'll tell you right now, if you tell me that you do dialysis on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then we'll shoot the show on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. If you tell me you're done with dialysis at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, then we'll start shooting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We will build the show around your personal needs. And he said, could I be Oscar to your Felix? And I looked at him and I said, you want to be the one who's a little off the rails and a little unpredictable? And you want me to be like the strong, silent, straight ahead guy? He said, yeah, I want to be the guy to jump through the plate glass window. I put out my hand and I said, done. I said, done. And he said, well, where do you live? I said, New York. He goes, oh, I hate New York. I said, okay. I said, that's all right, man. You don't have to live there. I said, we're going to shoot it in Hollywood. And I have no problem with that. I'll move to Hollywood for a while. We sold the show. I said, I need you to know that whatever you need, we're going to build the show around you. Simple as that. And he really, really appreciated that. And he looked at me and goes, you're kind of a wild guy, aren't you? And I looked at him, I said, oh, you have no idea. I said, you have no idea the life that I've led and what the things that I've done and the places that I've been. And he looked at me and goes, okay. And then one night, I'm actually, this is going to make me, again, sound, a little off the rail. I was in a script club in Hollywood one night called Crazy Girls. And I was actually shooting pool. They had a pool table in the back. And I was shooting pool with a couple of the dancers in the club. And my phone rings. And I look at it. Holy crap. It's Gary Coleman calling me on the phone. And I pick up the phone and it's loud. It's really loud. And he says to me, holy shit, it's so loud. He goes, are you in a script club? And I laughed. I started laughing hysterically. I said, actually, yes, I am. And he goes, I knew you were a wild guy. I'm sorry. I am truly sorry that we didn't stay closer friends after the show kind of fizzled out, because I did have his home phone number. Well, I had his cell phone number. And I really liked him. I really, really liked Gary. He was a tortured soul. He lived a very tough life. But talk about, being a shooting star, being a meteor, a comet. There was no one quite like him. He kind of turned the world upside down, when he first hit the world, when he first came out. He was very special and very unique. So, my director's high chair, not staying in closer contact with Mike, and not staying in closer contact with Gary Coleman. Those are my 3 regrets in life.
Gary Coleman did break out really big, especially remember when he was on Good Times?
Sure.
That, oh my God, he was hilarious and they loved him and then brought him on to, Different Strokes and
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
yeah, people didn't realize, the life and what was happening. And it was a shock, I imagine, to you too, knowing him so well at the time when you learned, of his untimely passing.
Oh, I was absolutely in shock. Um, I knew nothing about her, you know, nobody really did. All I knew was all of a sudden the guy was married. That's all I knew. Um, and, I can't speak much on it because I know so little. Um, I, I just know from my limited time with him. Oh, the other thing I forgot to tell you was when Gary and his agent left the meeting before my friend Dave and I did, and David Permut and Steve Longi, who ran his company for him, they both turned to me and they said, "You know, you're going to have to babysit him." And I looked at them and I said, "Am I getting paid?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Then I'll babysit him. I'll do whatever I have to do to keep him happy and to keep him focused. And if that includes, giving him a bottle and, bottle feeding him every now and then and babysitting him, then that's exactly what I'm going to do. Whatever it takes, whatever it takes." So, to answer the question, it came as an incredible shock. And I posted, not the next day, but maybe a couple of days later, what I thought was an incredibly heartfelt tribute to him on Facebook, discussing his life, his legacy, what he meant to me, growing up, um, what he meant to the world, um, what I thought about him as a person after getting to know him just a little, um, and the fact that I know that he liked me and that he felt very at ease with me and very comfortable with me, and how much that meant to me. And even now, thinking about it years later, I'm starting to get very emotional thinking about it. Uh, and I remember distinctly that as I'm sitting at my desk and I'm typing it into Facebook, I'm bawling. Like I'm just bawling. And, also how the business treated him after Diff'rent Strokes, how they basically threw him out, to the garbage. He was no longer important to them. Yeah, yeah, that's how I remember him, and yeah, it was sad. He led a very sad, tormented life because of his health issues. Obviously, his mother and father, screwing him over so badly. Friends that he thought were his friends screwing him over very badly. And when he said to me that day, "I don't know why, but I like you," that really that meant the world to me. It really did.